Hey up everybody, and welcome back. Right, well, as we don't have that big red thing on the table now, you can see we're getting back to Frankenstein. Or, as my wife has pointed out to me, I am Frankenstein. This is Frankenstein's monster. And as she's got a PhD, I generally accede to whatever she says. Alright, so we're going to work on footrests and the foot controls, i.e. the rear brake pedal and the gear change today. And then as you can see, I've been gathering together the bits and pieces for building the airbox, which, as I said before, is going to take us a complete episode, because the more I look at it, it's not quite as simple as I thought it was going to be. But before we go on, I would like to say thank you very much, because I've received a couple of, oops, whoa, it's alright, it's tied up, a couple of viewer appreciation gifts. I got a message from Lindell, however you pronounce it, sorry, it's got two L's, I'm thinking Lindell. Anyway, he got in touch with me about getting in touch with Charlie Prescott at the Otter website, so I gave him Charlie's phone number. And then a nice little package arrived with some honey from, I think it was his brother's farm, so the family farm, and a bag of chocolates, which is very much appreciated, thank you. Then I got another little package. You notice I've taken the precaution of keeping the letters with me, from Carl, who, I'll read it, it says, "Michael, you have bemoaned the fact that real 1/4-inch washers are not to be had. I'm taking it upon myself to change that. Enclose 2 slightly different sizes," and here we have 2 different sizes of washers. One is 0.255 ID, which is perfect, and one is 0.265, and also they're not huge, so they'll be very nice. I'll try those out, particularly with Allen-headed bolts. You know, you don't want too big a washer. So thank you very much for that. As I say, I mentioned them and he sent them in. So, had I mentioned I was also having great difficulty finding a nice big hydraulic sort of engine lift for taking things up and down? I just mentioned that in passing. Anyway, let's get on with the bike. I'd sat on the bike with the handlebars on, and I decided I wanted a footrest to be around about here somewhere. So I thought to myself, because of the age of this bike, i.e. it's sort of into the 70s, here in the States it's going to have folding footrests for safety reasons. I don't know if it's the same at home. So I couldn't just put, you know, like we would at home, a nice big long bolt sticking out with a rubber on it. So I looked on eBay and I wanted some folding footrests, but also I wanted them to, the mounting bolt to be long enough so that I could put a sleeve on for the brake and the gear change to pivot on. And when I was looking, I saw these. 2 of them. Nice and long, folding, just nice little, you know, footrests. They are in fact pillion rests of, I think it was a Yamaha DT, you know, the trail bike type thing. Would you believe it? They came in the bag, unopened, with a little Yamaha part number label inside it. And the pair of them, with free shipping, was $10. Well, $9.99 actually. So, what's that? £7, something of that sort. So I bought them because I thought, even if they don't work at that price, they'll come in handy for something. And they are, what, 10mm, 12mm, they're like 3/8 size, so they're nice and robust. And what I decided was, there's 3 holes here for mounting the actual footrest on the Norton. It's on like a plate and then it comes out here, both sides. So what I did was, I just drilled out and tapped this rear hole to take them. So they're going to go on like that. And the non-threaded portion is going to be perfect for, as I say, our sleeve for the pivot. So drilled and tapped them. Let's go around the other side. We'll do the gear change first, because you remember I've got the makings for that. This is the gear change that I found in my one of my boxes of bits. This end fits nicely, it's exactly right onto the gear shaft. So what we're going to do is extend it. So I put this on and I found out I need to be 7.5 inches longer. So I thought, okay, get a piece of stainless steel 1/4 inch, and this is 6mm 1.0 thread, because I'd screwed this end off. So took it off. And what do I find? I find that this piece is like a turnbuckle. This end's a right hand thread, that end is a left hand thread. So I thought to myself, am I going to buy a left hand thread 6mm by 1.0 die to use once and probably never again? Because obviously all left hand dies are more expensive. So I thought, no, I won't. What I'm going to do is cut my piece of stainless steel 1/4 inch, which is laid around somewhere, I'll find it later, and I'm just going to do a right hand thread at both ends. And what I'm going to do here at this end is I'll drill this thread out. Check that this rubber piece comes off. Drill the thread out, and then I'm going to weld a nut on there. So it'll all look fine, it'll be welded on, and then the rubber will go back on, so everything will look nice, and it'll be a stainless steel nut as well, and then it'll screw in, because I don't think you're going to need sort of fine adjustment for this. We'll screw it in the ends, offer it up. If it wants to be out, I'll unscrew it a bit, offer it up. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. So let's start on the bits. Now I've welded the nut onto there, and I'll tell you something, this steel, I couldn't drill the threads out. In the end, what I had to do was put like a 1/4 inch ball carbide burr, and with cutting oil and the carbide burr I managed to work my way down. So don't know what the hell that grade that is. Anyway, let's say there's the nut on. I've put a lock nut on each end of those. So that screws into there like that, and then this end screws into there, and there it is, ready to go on. Got to put the rubber onto that, of course. But other than that, it's all set to go. This has got a bit bent over the years, so I'll have to straighten this out slightly, but we'll do that when this is actually fitted on the bike, so we'll see where it wants to go. So I'll put the rubber on, and next thing is to see about a bush to go in here onto the footrest. I've turned up this piece here to be the pivot for that. And the reason it's that shape and not just a sort of plain sleeve is, as you can see, I've got to hold it off when it's bolted up flat. I've got enough space for this piece here. The main thing to remember when you're making one of these is, of course, if you can see it there, you've got to make the part it pivots on a fraction longer than this, because when it goes on, whether it's you know, like if it was a side stand where it goes inside a bracket, or whether, as in here, it's bolted up tight against, you don't want to crimp onto this itself. So this just sticks out very slightly. Again, you don't want it sticking a long way out so this can slide. You want it to be held in there, but when that's tight, that should still be able to move. Okay, so that's that done. We can try it. Right, let's try this on. So we've got our piece in there. I want that to be about, that's screwed out. Thought that seemed a bit long. I want enough space to be able to get our toe under it. There we go. All right, one side done. Let's move over and look at the brake. Oh, there is one other thing here. As you can see, this bolt that goes through is right where the chain is. So we don't have much space on the back for a nut. So I was wondering what to do about it. I was thinking I would just use one of those nice sort of domed Allen, what they call them, mushroom cap things, with the bolt through from that side and the nut on here, but you know, it was going to look a bit odd. But then I thought to myself, oh, they've all got spacing pieces in behind them. This has got to be sort of held out a little bit, this plate, so it's not up against the frame. So what I'm going to do is, instead of this alloy spacing piece at the back, I'm going to make a steel one. And I'll actually drill and tap that, and then I'll weld it onto the frame, because we've got the plate here. I'll weld it onto there, and then this can just screw straight in. So we'll do that a little bit later. But let's get on with the rear brake pedal. I've put the outer cover on this side of the engine so that I'd know where my foot was going to be, because I had a sudden thought that it stuck out a bit more, but the back end is quite narrow. This is for the kickstart, and I don't think I'm going to put the kickstart on. I'm going to put a blanking plug in that. The later model, the 850, didn't have a kickstart, they just used the electric starter. And also it makes it a lot easier for me to make a brake lever, because obviously the kickstart would want to pivot down here. So that would, I mean, I could fold that up and that would probably be fine, but it would mean sort of tucking in the brake lever like that so that there was enough swing. And you know, if I actually only wanted to be about here, so it'd all get very awkward. But fortunately, with an electric start, we don't need the kickstarter, so I'm going to just blank that off. So we screw this in so that we know how much we've got here, and we've got just on an inch, so I can make a nice 1 inch wide pivot so there won't be any wobble to it. And what we need to know next is how big my foot is, or how long the brake lever should be. Actually, I think I might have a rummage around. I might have a brake lever. If not, it's going to be very similar to the other side. We're going to make a sleeve that will go on there, that this will bolt up tight to, and that will be our pivot tube. Then onto that we'll have a piece that slides over that centre. We've got a welded piece on that sticks out here, and a nice little footrest, you know, toe piece, whatever. Then we're going to need to weld on a piece that goes up here for the arm that's going to go back to the brake. So let's gather some bits and pieces together. As I say, I'll have a quick, I've never thought to have a look around. I might have a brake lever that will work, or that we can cut off and use the actual length and the toe piece, which would make things easier. Otherwise we'll make one up from scratch. So let me go and look at some bits, and then we'll go and start fabricating. Alright, we're back. Look what I found. Just nice. Cut this end off. It's got a nice what would you say, corrugated, serrated, whatever foot, and it's just the right length. I measured from my instep to about where I would want pardon me, my foot to be, and it's about 5.5 inches. And this thing, as you can see, is 6 inches long, so I cut a little bit off. So now all we have to do is turn up these couple of pieces here. We'll bend this slightly, weld it on, and then we can make our actual pivot arm. Now before I forget, I've got some homework for you. Let me swing the camera around slightly. Every time I walk past this bike, I look at these clip-ons and think, they're incredibly long. There's a twist grip, look. So, what I want you to do is, any of you, if you have a cafe racer type bike, or if you have a bike with clip-ons, or you have a mate who has a bike with clip-ons, get a tape measure out and tell me how long they are. Because these just strike me as far too long. I think I can take, as I say, we don't want them to be too short, but crikey, I think I can take a couple of inches off. Well, 1.5 inches, something like that. Or maybe not. But I think so. It just doesn't, they just don't look right. So there you go, some homework for you. Comments please. First part of this I made was the outer sleeve that the actual lever will go on. Just so happened I had a piece of 1 inch diameter, 1 inch long. So I reamed it out to 3/4, and this is a piece of 3/4 round. So we've got a nice fit on that. So the next thing we're going to do is make the centre piece. So that's going to be 1 inch long, and that's going to have the hole through it the size of of the footrest bolt. So let me turn this, and then we can start to gather the bits. Now, oh, pardon me. Oh, I almost slipped up here because the outer sleeve goes like that. But I had some nice stainless steel 1 inch washers, so what we'll do is we'll put one of them on, look. Then we put our centre piece on. Then we put our piece that the actual lever will go on. You know, it's maybe overkill a little bit here. Bulkier than the other side, but then if all our measurements are correct, I made a slight adjustment, of course, for the addition of the washed stainless steel washers. They should be tight at the top. We can actually put a nut on the back of this, and then the that, you see, doesn't wobble too much. So that's like that, and that will come out here nicely. So let's do cut the end of our lever with a curve to match this 1 inch, and then we'll get that welded on. And that side is, oh no, it's not done at all. We've got the piece to put on the top. So let's get on. So I've shortened the lever, and I've chamfered it and put a curve in so it'll make a nice joint. So let me weld that on there, and then we're going to have to bend the lever a little bit to make it fit right. So there we have our pedal welded on. So now I'm going to have to heat it up and bend it a little bit. There's the pedal on. So it nicely misses this. Put your foot on, everything like that. So what we need now is the actual lever arm that goes up here to pull the rod. And what I'm going to do is I'm sort of going to build it in reverse. We're going to use some 3/4 stainless for the rod, which I mentioned before. I don't think that would try to stretch out so much. You know, when you put bends in things to get them to dog leg, when you pull, the bends try to straighten out and you lose some of the effort, some of the pedal effort. So what I'm going to try and do here is make it straight. So in order to get this lined up and everything, we're going to start at this end. I'm going to put the trunnion in. I'll thread the end of this rod and make up a knurled adjuster. We'll put the trunnion in, put the adjuster on so it's all held right, and see where it goes. And then I might have to tweak the angle that this is at. And the same with here. Instead of having a straight vertical one, I'll probably have it, instead of being like that, I'll probably have it a little to the side so that it gets that and pulls it direct. So let me go and thread this end and turn up a knurled adjuster, which is a simple enough thing. I mean, it's just going to be a piece of alloy round, tap down the centre and one end of it knurled. And see if I can find a trunnion for this. I've seen it somewhere. If not, I'll have to make one of those as well. So let me get on with those. Of course, I couldn't find a trunnion, so I've had to make one. So I've put a flat on one side for the adjuster to go up against. Then I have threaded my bit of rod. Oh, tell you what. That goes in there, of course. Then I've threaded my bit of rod, like so, and I've made an adjuster. So, I was wondering, I've made this out of aluminium. Oh, don't cross thread it, Michael, come on. And I was wondering whether I should make it out of steel. Being a road bike rather than trials bike, you know, more pressure on the back brake. But there's about an inch of fine 28 threads per inch thread, so I think there's a lot of surface pressure, a lot of surface area on that. So anyway, there it is. That goes in there. Let's see me if I can. Oh, we're getting a little bit out of focus as well, aren't we? How's that? So as you can see, that goes up against the flat on there, fits in nicely. So there we have it. So let's go and put these on and see what's happening on the bike. We've got the brake end put on, all that's on, and that's not bad. We've got a little bit of wiggle room there, so the next thing we want, you see, is to make an arm to go from there to there, and to know that when we pull it, it won't catch on anything, so it's not going to catch on there. Again, we're trying to keep it as straight as possible. So we want that, we don't want it up in the air, we want it down a little bit, because don't forget as well, the seating position is going to have the legs slightly forward, even though the clip-ons are quite high, so your foot isn't going to be like that, your foot's going to be like that a bit. So we need the pedal to be about there, rather than your foot being on it clonk there. It's going to be about there, and that's going to have plenty of ankle movement to get that right. So I'll rig up a little something to hold this in the position I want it, and then we're going to decide where we're going to cut this off, and then we're going to make the piece that goes onto the upper arm. Now I could just, as I've done on the trials bikes, just make a little U-shaped piece and weld it to it. But I thought I'd go mad this time and make one of those really nice tapered split things for a clevis pin, like they have on, I think it's the BSA 650s have them. You know, we could have the cheapy, where is it? Just a bend, put a split pin in. Actually the Royal Enfield one, as with everything, is what must be 5/16, and they have that type of adjuster on the end. So we're going to make a really nice piece here. I'll show you the drawing of what I'm planning to do. Now this is what we're going to make for the other end of the brake rod. This is the brake rod here. So I'm going to use some, I don't know, 3/4, 1 inch round, something like that to start with. It'll be turned down here and then angled up there. We'll drill it and tap it here to take the brake rod, and then we'll mill a slot into it to take the brake pedal part, and we'll just mill both sides flat, drill through, tap that side so we can put a bolt in, and we'll countersink here. See, I'm getting really technical to make a nice finish there. So I'll show you some bits of this, of the actual machining, and we'll get on and make it, and then we can cut the rod to length and screw this on. And then when that's on, you see, we can put this arm into place and make sure it's at the right angle and everything, hold it there and weld it in situ. So let's go and do some machining. Here's the first part. I turned this down to 3/8 there. This is going to be drilled for a 1/4 inch fine, and this is 5/8. Looks a bit chunky, but I wanted to make the slot a reasonable thickness so that the arm isn't too flimsy, and then of course I want enough on either side of that slot so that this isn't flimsy. So I think I'll stick with this sort of 5/8, maybe a little bit less. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'll maybe turn that down a little bit, then I'm going to drill and tap that, then I'll take this out, put it in the bandsaw, cut it off, and then we can put it in the milling machine. There's our piece roughed out. I've threaded at this end, so the rod's going to go in there. Then the way we're going to machine it is we're going to use one of these 5C collets, 3/8, and then put that into one of these here collet blocks. The right way around. And you see I can put that in the vise on the milling table. Put that in the vise, and then when I come through with the end mill I can do the middle and I can do the sides, and everything will be kept nice and straight. So let me do that. You just missed some excitement actually. The reason I didn't film it a few minutes ago was because we were going through a huge thunderstorm. I mean, you couldn't hear yourself think for the rain. It's all flooded around the garage within 10 minutes. So there you go. So let me go put this in the mill and then we'll do some milling. So this is the setup in the mill. As I say, I've used one of these collet blocks. We centered here, I've got a 1/4 inch milling, so I'm going to mill a 1/4 inch slot through there. And then when that's done, I can move over the required amount and just ease up the sides to make them look nice. But then because it's all held in this and everything's set up, I can just turn this block 90 degrees and lay it flat, and those flats will be exactly right angles to here, and they'll be right to drill through. So let me go around and do that and then I'll come back. Now I've cut the slot and I've just eased both sides, and I don't think I've made this long enough because we need to have, it's not just a case of it going in straight, but of course it's going to go up and down as the lever pulls. That's going to be like that. So anyway, let's see. So the thing I mentioned about using this was I can just do that. Everything's locked in position. So now if I lay that in there, that's exactly at 90 degrees to the way it was, and this is still on the center line. So I can just take this end mill out, put the drill bit in, and I can drill my hole. So I might drill it and put a clevis pin in. Think about it while I'm putting the drill bit in. Alright, I just looked at the last bit of video and you couldn't see what I was talking about. There's what I meant about laying the collet block down. This flat now is perfectly at right angles to, well, the drill is going to come down perpendicular, and this got back to 0 on my DRO. This is exactly on the center line of here. So now I can take this collet out, as I say. I'll put the drill chuck in and drill a hole in that. There it is, all finished, corners rounded off, and it's nowhere near big enough, I've decided. So you saw how I made it, so I made another one. And as you can see, I've given myself a lot more space for the, I've got a little bit of something to go in. No, I don't really. For that to go at an angle like that. So there you go. I'll round the ends off, but so you can see I've got a lot more depth, a lot more throat if you like. And it's got a full 1/4 inch, so it's 1/4 inch fine. I didn't chamfer it, I'm just going to put one of my nice little mushroom top ones on, I think. And I'll put a lock nut on the back. But it's all there, all nicely smoothed out. As I say, I'll do the do those corners. That was a bugger. All the time I was looking at it, I was thinking, you've made that wrong. So, there you go. When in doubt, make another one. And I found a handy little spot to bolt that, well, to fasten that up. I think that's going to be reasonable. Maybe slightly lower. So what we need to do now is cut this about there and thread it so that it screws into there, and then make the arm to go up there. And what I've decided to do is, rather than make it out of a piece of flat, I'm going to make it out of a piece of round, and I'll just mill the ends to be the flat, because doing it that way will make it much easier to have it at an angle. See, with a flat I'd have to be either bending it or putting it across that way, but if I do it like this, I can just simply put a curve in the bottom of that to make a nice fit on that, and then just mill those at whatever I decide the angle's going to be, and then drill a hole through them. So I'll mark that, keep my hands out of the way, I'll mark that, as I say, we'll put it about there, so that goes back a little bit, because you want this in its travel when it's working to be going over the apex. If it was right back here, then for a certain degree there you'll get less pull than if it's going right across the top. From so many degrees before to so many degrees after, you'll maximise the amount of pull you get. So if we put that about there, you see, just behind, then it'll come to just in front and it'll be full on. It'll be like that. Alright, so I'll do that, but I'll do it tomorrow because it's late. So I've made the upright piece, milled each side flat, put our hole in. Because of the circumference of this and the size of that, I didn't actually need to sort of scallop it in the bottom. So what I have done is chamfered it so we can get a nice weld. So let's have a look, see, that goes in there like that. And that goes on there like that. And then that should be fine for that, I think. It looks a good length. Gives us plenty of pull. So got to make sure it's going to clear here as it swings across, and that it clears the rear suspension unit. So that's about everything. Okay, I've actually moved the TIG welder over here because, as you may remember, I changed the compressor from being hardwired into the 220 to having a socket with the same plug as the TIG welder. On there. have our brake. It's a bit old. Okay, I'll weld this up, and then the last thing we've got to do is make a little stop for this. And as luck would have it, there's a hole just there in this plate, so I can tap it and we'll just make a little stop for it to go up against. Alright, and now we have our stop. It needs a little lock nut putting on it, but that'll screw out to adjust if you want it differently. And actually now I can sort of put a bit of pressure on this, which I couldn't do before, which is why the lever was going so far. Bink bonk. There we go. That's about. So that's more it. Alright. Brake, stop. Gear change, everything done there. So now been putting it off, but we've got to do the airbox. But that's it for this one. So until we meet again, enjoy yourselves.